apparently going separately in separate directions. They come back at maybe slightly different times, and then they have the seats put away, and so then they have to set up the seats, and they don't have tap water, but they have to go maybe to a well or to a storage place where they keep the water, take the water for drinking, and then other water for washing, and then they put out something like a garbage bin for any food that will be left over. Okay, then the one who returns last, if he doesn't get enough alms food himself, he could eat the food which is left over. Otherwise, if there are leftovers, then he will put it into the refuse bucket and then throw it away where there's no greenery, or he'll put it into water where there's no life. Actually, it seems to me that the better way to put away the excess food is to put it someplace in the woods or the forest where animals will get it. But one has to be careful what kind of animals there are, because where I used to live in Sri Lanka, we used to have the problem with the monkeys. Terrible, terrible creature. So, the place where I was staying, we first used to put the food out, and then the monkeys would come, and they would eat it and fight amongst themselves. And usually it's the big, tough monkey always has to get the food first and push away the smaller monkeys. And he makes first claim on the best food. If he sees a smaller monkey coming to get the food. Have you ever seen monkeys in the wild? Not even in Taiwan? Are there monkeys in Taiwan? There are. He'll come and chop, show his teeth, snarling and show his teeth. And if a little monkey comes to get it, jump on the little monkey, sometimes bite the back of the little monkey and chase the little monkey away till he's had his full. Then he'll go off, and then the other monkeys come. And I'm sorry to say this, but we speak about patriarchal society as though we're like a human invention, but we could see it in the monkey world. It's the big male monkeys who get the food first, and then the females get the food after the big male monkeys have gotten it, and then they take the food for their children. But the big male monkeys don't care whether the children get food or not. And then what happens if the monkeys are not given their regular food? Then they get very angry and vindictive, and they come to the place where you're living and they pound on the roof, pound on the door. Yes, truly, truly. Not exaggerating. And the place where I was staying, there was this the roof was made out of these asbestos corrugated tiles, and they would go to the edge of the roof and pick it up if they didn't get enough, and they would pound it. And usually, often after the meal, I want to take a little quiet rest, and so I would be lying down, resting, and then suddenly I hear this stomping on the roof. Then they come to the edge of the roof, and then we get this heavy pounding. And sometimes the monkeys, if they get really angry, they'll attack the human being. They don't really intend harm for the human being, but they just want to get some kind of vengeance if you're not feeding them properly. So that's why it's a little risky to put the food out if there are monkeys around. You have to keep, if you want to feed the monkeys, you have to walk some distance and then feed them at some distance so that they don't create a disturbance around one's living place. Okay, so he says the one who comes last will throw the food away where there's no greenery, or put it into water where there is no life. Then he puts away the seeds, the drinking water, and the washing water. he'll put away the refuse bucket after washing it, and then he'll sweep out the refectory. Okay, then, this is a problem we don't quite have in the US, but in the traditional society where we don't have running water coming through the tap, there's water to use in the toilets, water to use in the kitchen for washing utensils. And so sometimes that water runs low, and so if one sees that it's running low, then one should take the vessel to the place where one stores the water, fill it, and bring it back. Okay, but then if the vessel is too heavy, what Anuruddha says is that we call somebody else by a signal of the hand, has a kind of hand gesture to call a person, and then together they will lift that heavy water vessel and carry it and bring it to the appropriate place. But he says, on this occasion, we don't break into speech. So for 4 days out of the 5, they're observing together noble silence. Even though they're arhats, so they can't have any disturbance to their meditation, but it seems that they just want to have a mind which is completely free from an obligation to engage in conversation. And especially for maybe worldly people, even monks who are living meditative lives, sometimes if one person starts speaking, the other person will have to reply, then that will spark off a conversation which will develop, unfold, and then the talk goes on and on and on, maybe for an hour, 2 hours, and then when you leave the conversation, the mind is disturbed and it takes very diligent practice to settle it again. So he says, during these days, we don't break out into speech, but every 5 days we sit together throughout the night discussing the Dharma. So he says, that is how we abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. Okay, then the Buddha says, while you abide thus diligent, ardent, and resolute, have you attained any superhuman state, any distinction in knowledge worthy of the Noble One? A comfortable abiding or a dwelling at ease? You see, Anuruddha's explanation here, a statement of what they're doing, doesn't indicate their practice of meditation explicitly. And yet the Buddha's question, while you're dwelling thus diligent, ardent, and resolute, he's asking whether you have achieved anything. And yet he hasn't touched on the meditation practice. It seems almost as though a paragraph had fallen out from the sutta, in which they explained how they conducted their meditation. Of course, now Anuruddha replies by answering how they've attained what is called an uttari manusa dhamma, which means a superhuman state, and alam arya jnana dasana viseso. That's some excellent attainment of knowledge and vision, worthy of the noble ones. And then he says, here, Venerable Sir, whenever we want, secluded from sense pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, we enter and dwell in the first jhana, the first meditative absorption, accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. That is a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision that we attain as we dwell diligent, ardent, and resolute. Okay, then the Buddha asks whether you've achieved any higher distinction in knowledge and vision. And Anuruddha explains how they've all achieved the second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. Then he goes on to explain how they've all achieved, I'm going down quickly, paragraph 14, how they've all achieved the base of the infinity of space. This is the first of the formless meditations. Then he goes on to explain how they've all achieved the base of the infinity of consciousness, the base of nothingness, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. So they've all achieved the 4 jhanas and the 4 formless meditations. Okay, then the Buddha asks, paragraph 18, is there any further superhuman state, distinction and knowledge and vision that you've attained? And Anuruddha explains how they have all achieved the attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling. So he says, whenever we want, by completely surmounting the base of neither perception nor non-perception, and we enter and dwell in the cessation of perception and feeling, and then he indicates that they've all achieved the destruction of the defilements. In other words, that they've all achieved arhatship. So he says, and our taints are destroyed by our seeing with wisdom. So this is another superhuman state that we've all attained. And then he says, we do not see any other comfortable abiding or dwelling at ease higher or more sublime than this one. Then the Buddha confirms this and he says, good, good, Anuruddha, there is no other comfortable abiding higher or more sublime than that one. Okay, then the Buddha apparently gives them some further talk in order to, it says that he instructed, urged, roused, and gladdened them. But since they're all arhats, they don't really have to be urged or roused. But this is just a stock expression to indicate that the Buddha gave them some talk to inspire them. Okay, then the Buddha decides that it's time to leave, so he gets up and departs. And the other monks go with him part of the way and then turn back. Now I'm in paragraph 20. And then this is an interesting part of this sutta. The 2 other friends of Anuruddha, Venerable Kimbila and Venerable Nandiya and Venerable Kimbila, say to Anuruddha, they ask him, have we ever reported to you that we have obtained those attainments which you yourself ascribe to us in the presence of our teacher, the Buddha? And so this is interesting because I have to say nowadays, somebody maybe does a little meditation, they maybe do an intensive course, an extended course, 1 month, 2 months, and then they're always thinking, oh, have I gotten enlightenment? Have I gotten enlightenment yet? And then maybe, they go to the teacher, they report their experience, maybe the teacher says something like, mm-hmm. And then they say, the teacher is saying that I've gotten enlightenment. Oh, so-and-so has practiced under this teacher, that teacher, and he was confirmed by this one is getting enlightenment, by that one is getting enlightenment. And so then, it goes out on the internet and broadcast all over the world so people know that such and such a person has studied with this one, that one, and he's been confirmed to have reached enlightenment under those teachers. But here, these are 3 very advanced meditating monks who've been good friends, maybe for years, and they don't even report to one another about their attainments. There's another story that comes in Visuddhimagga about, not quite up to this level, but 2 monks who were very good friends, and one of them observed what is called the sitting practice. The sitting practice means that it's a vow that one makes not to lie down to sleep, but one sits in the sitting posture. And so when one really masters it, one doesn't even lean against the wall, but one is able just to sit in the ordinary meditation posture, and one is able to fall asleep maybe for a few hours, and that becomes enough so that when one wakes up, one is refreshed. I know of a few very advanced meditation masters who have observed that. Back in my very early days as a monk, when I heard that some advanced meditators have done that, I have to try it myself. So I leaned against the wall of my bedroom or the cottage where I was living. And after about 15 minutes, the pillow starts singing a song. We are lonely for your head tonight. Wouldn't you like to lie down? And I look at the pillow and say, did you say something? And then the pillow says, why are you avoiding us tonight? Did we do something offensive to you? Did I insult you or hurt you in some way? And I said to the pillow, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you all alone tonight. Let me keep you company. Then the next morning I thought, what a lazy fellow. Tonight I will do it. Make a vow to stay up all night. But didn't succeed. The song of the pillow was just too sweet and enticing. Okay, so, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. So, of these two monks who were friends, one of them observed the sitting practice, and since they were living each in their own kuti, their own little hut, for all the time, the one who was observing the practice never told his friend that he was observing this practice. And the friend, of course, didn't even know that his friend was observing this practice. But one time they were traveling together and they had to stay overnight at some monastery. And the monastery, the guest master in the monastery said, I'm sorry, but we don't have separate rooms for you tonight. We'll have to put you, both of you, in the same room. And so two monks went into the same room. They would have sat meditating during the early part of the night. And so the monk who was not observing the sitting practice probably got tired first, and he lay down to go to sleep, whereas the other monk remained in the sitting posture. Okay, then in the middle of the night, the monk who was lying down got up and he noticed his friend sitting in meditation. And he said to him, he must be observing the sitting posture. I said, the sitting practice. He said, are you an observer of the sitting practice? And his friend was so modest, he didn't want even his close friend to know that he was observing that practice. And so he decided, even though he had made that vow, in order to protect his sort of privacy and to maintain his modesty, he lay down on the bed and said, no friend, I had just come back from going to the latrine, and I was just sitting for a few moments before lying down again. Then probably when his friend fell asleep, then he got up and resumed his sitting practice. Okay, so coming back to the sutta, Anuruddha now explains that, he says that even though you never reported to me your attainments, but I have used my own mind in order to look into your minds. This is the power of knowing the minds of others. And I have known that you have achieved those attainments. And then Anuruddha also had frequent conversations with the deities. Maybe you believe this, maybe you don't. But this is what was reported. And the deities would be able to read the minds of human beings, and they knew that his friends had reached these various meditative absorptions and arhatship, and they had reported this to Anuruddha. Okay, so that ends the conversation between the monks. And now a certain spirit, I think this is a yaksha, one of the fierce spirits, comes to the Buddha and tells the Buddha that it is a gain for the Vajjayans. The Vajjayans will be the people, the residents of that state where these three monks are living. It is a gain for them, a great gain, that the Tathagata is living amongst them, and these three young men, Anuruddha, Nandiya, and Kimbila, are living here. So when the Yaksha, Diga Parajana, exclaims this, then the earth gods utter that same exclamation, then that same exclamation goes up from one realm of the gods to another realm of the gods to another realm of the gods, until the deities of the Brahma world shout out, it is a gain for the Vajjayans, a great gain for them, that the Buddha is living amongst them and these three young monks. And so at that time, these venerable ones were known even as far as the Brahma world. Okay, then the Buddha tells this yaksha, this spirit, so it is, so it is. And then he says, this is quite a moving passage, if the clan or family from which these three young men have gone forth into the homeless life, remember these young men with confident heart, with a mind of faith and devotion, that will lead to the welfare and happiness of that clan, that family for a long time. And if the people in the retinue of that clan remember these young men in this way, if the people in the village, the town, the city, the country remember these, think of these young men in such a way, that will lead to the well-being and happiness of the country for a long time. If all of the members of the Kshatriya clan, the nobles or aristocrats, remember them, that will lead to the welfare and happiness of the nobles. And so for the Brahmins, the merchants, the workers, remember these three clansmen with trusting hearts. That will lead to the welfare of the Brahmins, the Vaishyas, the Shudras for a long time. Then if the whole world with its gods, Maras, Brahmas, and so on, remember these three young men with trusting hearts, that would lead to the welfare and happiness of the world for a long time. And the Buddha says, see how these three young men are practicing for the welfare and happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the good welfare and happiness of the gods and human beings. Okay, and that is the end of the sutta. Okay, if anybody has any questions, then please feel welcome to ask.
I just have one comment. It says they would spend all night discussing the Dhamma every 5 days, but apparently they wouldn't discuss meditation or insight.
Yeah, it's
I'm curious to know what it was they were talking about.
Yeah. I have to say it is a little bit strange that they could discuss the Dhamma without giving some indication of their experience.
Yeah.
And then certainly if they're speaking, say, if one is speaking about the jhanas, one would get the suspicion, is he speaking from direct experience or is he just quoting the books? So there aren't any books.
Yeah.
And if he's just quoting the books or what they've heard from the Buddha, they probably have all heard this, so there's nothing really additional to report. And then if he's speaking beyond what the Buddha himself has said about the jhanas or about the insight knowledges, You can pretty much tell when somebody is speaking from direct experience and when he's just quoting what the books say. So it seems almost as though, well, it often occurs to me, I have to say, that sometimes the suttas are framed and worded not to conform to our realistic expectations, but to convey messages.
Right, yeah.
And so like the message is, to be modest about one's own attainments and not to go boasting about it to others immediately. Okay, let's take Treya.
It's a bit rude to go looking into someone else's mind. So it always strikes me like he heard it. That's what it strikes me as really rude. Yeah. For all of those here in the internet land, my comment was, does it seem rude to read someone's mind? And in witchcraft, that's known as overlooking, which is considered a dodgy practice. If I would know what you're up to, I can overlook you.
Considered, wait. Considered a what practice? Dodgy, you said?
Dodgy. It's really dodgy. Not good, bad tongue.
I have to say, I mean, we hear that maybe the National Security Agency is listening in on our phone calls.
We don't expect morality from them.
Yeah. I have to say,
it's just a comment I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, it struck me too. Yeah. But, well, the Buddha doesn't.
Yeah, all three of them are arahants. So.
And it's not only that the Buddha does it with monks that he knows to be arahants. Sometimes, he finds, what is that monk thinking about? Has he been reading Playboy in his spare time? Then he'll come over and scold the monk. You shouldn't be thinking in that way, but you should be thinking in this way.
I was struck with the story of the one monk declining to reveal that he was practicing the sitting posture for the sake of the other monk.
Yeah, maybe let's hold off a few seconds till this. It seems exceptionally loud today.
Long.
And exceptionally long. Okay, please.
You related something in the Sutta which one of the monks said to the other monk that he was not practicing the sitting posture as he was sleeping. Did I hear that correctly?
Actually, if I said that, I wouldn't have said that because that would have been false speech.
That's why I raised the question.
Yeah.
Was he not telling the truth when he said he was practicing in order to spare the other monk's feelings out of metta?
It just struck me that, because I'm just relating this story from a vague recollection of it. I didn't, review the story before I came to the class. But almost certainly he would not have spoken falsely. But he would have done something so that without speaking falsely, he would have dispelled the impression that he was observing the sitting practice.
That's pretty clever.
I'll have to check out the story on that point. Does anybody have a copy of Visuddhimagga with them? Yes, okay, Richard?
Well, but in that case, instead of speaking falsely, isn't he signaling or acting falsely? I mean, it's still a false communication.
Again, I'd have to look at the story to see how it takes place. But again, it might be a fictional story to convey the importance of sort of modesty about one's practices. But I have to say exactly what the story says.
Oh, I mean, whatever the story is, I mean, presumably there are many incidents like that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's easy to deceive oneself about the forms of one's own deception. That is, there are all kinds of politenesses which are meant to conceal things that you don't want other people to know. Yeah. There are lots of ways of, there are enormous numbers of ways of deceiving oneself and others.
Yeah,
And
no.
you have to,
No.
like, false speech doesn't really say it all. There are false actions and there are false gestures and words.
I'll have to take another look at the story. Okay, we'll take one more question and then we'll have to break for lunch.
I know that you mentioned the conspicuous lack of a reference to meditation, but I wonder if the sutta means to suggest that if we live in a more deliberate way,
Yeah.
keeping more silent,
Yeah.
is that a way to attain, it's at least the first jhana in the midst of ordinary activity?
I'd say certainly the kind of way in which the monks conduct themselves is to be understood as conducive to their meditative attainments. But usually the expression dwelling, diligent, ardent, and resolute, it's almost a standard part of the way the suttas are framed, that it's connected with the practice of meditation. And yet, it seems as though something had been dropped from the sutta, or had been missing. That's what I would have expected to see something. It could be something like there's a passage on what's called wakefulness, where they dwell during the day, sitting and walking back and forth, and sitting, and then they lie down in the middle of the night, mindful and clearly comprehending, and then they wake up in the last part of the night, and then they spend the time sitting and walking back and forth. And usually that's dispelling, removing obstructive states from the mind, which means defilements. But since these are arhats, they wouldn't have obstructive states anymore. Okay, let me just take the one internet question, then we will break for lunch. Can right view and wrong view live in harmony? I think he means, can people with right view and wrong view live in harmony? I think it depends on the degree of harmony. If people have different views, if the wrong view is not a very grave or serious wrong view that will lead them to morally disruptive conduct, I say they can achieve a fair degree of harmony, providing they behave properly. But at a higher level, maybe that they can't live together harmoniously. Okay, let us end with the sharing of the merits, so that the devas of the earth deities will share in the merits, the devas of the four great kings, the Tavatimsa devas, all the ways up to the Brahma will share in our merits. Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Sasana. Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahitika Punyantang Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Desana. Akasata Chabumata Deva Naga Mahitika Punyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Mam Param Etavatacha Hehi Sampadam Punya Sampadam Sabbe Devanumodantu Sabbe Bhudanumodantu Sabbe Sadanumodantu Sabba Sampati Siddhya Bhavagupadhaya Vichetato Etantare Satakayupapanna Rupya Rupicha Lasanya Sanino Dukha Pamochantu Kosantu Vibhuti. okay, let us do 3,000. Just one thing I just wanted to mention. Maybe some of you know that we have an organization that we call Buddhist Global Relief. It's a Buddhist-based relief and development organization providing assistance to poor communities around the world, especially by way of providing food relief and educational assistance. If anybody doesn't know about the organization and would like to know more about it, Kim Baden, could you raise your hand? Yeah, she has some flyers, brochures about the organization. And if you think, especially we are looking for some volunteers who would like to help the work of the organization, so you can learn about our work, and if you think you have some of skills that could contribute to the benefit of the organization, please feel welcome to lend your assistance to us. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just very quickly. We are an all-volunteer organization.
Yeah, please put the...
We are an all-volunteer organization, and we just finished our fiscal year from July 1st of 2008 to, I'm sorry.
No, we finished from 2009 to...
Yeah, 2009 to June 30th, and our administrative ratio is about 2 to 3%, which means that out of every dollar that you donate to the organization, basically 97% is going to the poor. So, and because we're an all-volunteer organization, we depend on volunteers to help us with various aspects. And we do have an application that we share with new volunteers as to different areas that you could help. But basically, mainly in the IT area, like website, we need a lot of help there. We need help in like fundraising. And we kind of like starting our fundraising effort as we speak now. So we would really appreciate and thank you so much for all of your support up to this point.
Yeah, in the 2 years of our existence, we've launched about 20 projects.
And and
several in Cambodia, Vietnam, Burma, India, in Africa, in Niger and Mali, and most recently we launched a project in Central Asia. This is Afghanistan and Pakistan, helping poor girls in remote villages to go to school. And we also about to start a project in the United States to help distribute food to food kitchens, which will provide to poor people who can't purchase their own food.
And I can bring the brochures the boxes.
Okay, yeah. You could just put them out, and those who don't know about PGR can take brochures.
We have brochures in both Chinese and English, so. So these are the English brochures, and then we have some in Chinese. So you're welcome to